They say blood is thicker than water. But nobody warns you when that blood turns to poison. I never thought the house I bought with my own sweat and savings would become a battlefield. But here I am, 30 years old, standing in my living room that no longer feels like mine, watching my father examine my hardwood floors like a real estate appraiser, while my mother rearranges my throw pillows with the casual entitlement of someone who believes she belongs here more than I do. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I'm an architect. I've spent the last 8 years building my career from nothing, working late nights and weekends, saving every penny to afford this small but perfect house in the suburbs. The mortgage papers have my name alone on them. The deed is mine. Every payment comes from my bank account. Yet somehow, tonight feels like I'm the guest at my own dinner table. The evening started with such hope. I had planned this dinner for weeks, wanting to share my achievement with the people who should have been proudest of me. I cooked my mother's favorite roast, set the table with the good china I'd inherited from Grandma Rose, and even bought flowers for the centerpiece. I wanted everything to be perfect because part of me still craved their approval. Still believed that maybe this time, they would see me as worthy. My father Robert arrived first, his critical eyes immediately scanning every corner of my home. Instead of congratulating me, he commented on the property taxes I'd be paying and questioned whether I'd gotten a good deal. My mother Martha followed him in, barely acknowledging the effort I'd put into preparing everything, more interested in checking her phone than engaging in conversation. My sister Serafina was the last to arrive, her attention glued to her screen as she made snide remarks about people who buy houses they can't really afford. Throughout dinner, the tension was suffocating. Every compliment I tried to share about my new neighborhood was met with skepticism. Every detail about my promotion at work was dismissed or minimized. When I mentioned how proud I was of finally achieving this dream, Serafina actually rolled her eyes and muttered something about showing off. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened when I brought out dessert. My father stood up suddenly, his napkin hitting the table with a finality that made my stomach drop. His voice was calm, measured, and completely devastating when he announced, "Eleanor, we've made a decision. This house needs to return to the family. Serafina and Ryan will be moving in." The words didn't compute at first. I stared at him, fork halfway to my mouth, wondering if I'd misheard. But my mother was nodding along, explaining in her soft, reasonable tone that I was too busy with work to properly manage a property like this, and that it would be better for everyone if my sister took over. Serafina's smile was pure triumph. She had disappeared during the main course and now returned with a suitcase, my old suitcase from college, and began casually explaining how they'd already helped me pack the essentials. The audacity was breathtaking. She placed my house keys on the table like she was doing me a favor and suggested I could visit on holidays if I called ahead. I sat there in stunned silence, watching my family dismantle my life with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed operation. The casual way they spoke about my home, my sanctuary, as if it were just another family asset to be redistributed according to their whims, made me feel like I was drowning in my own dining room. When I finally found my voice to protest, my father's response chilled me to the bone. He reminded me that family comes first, that I owed them for everything they'd done for me growing up, and that my selfish independence was hurting the people who loved me most. The emotional manipulation was masterful, designed to make me question my own reality. But something inside me had shifted. Maybe it was the sight of Serafina casually going through my mail on the kitchen counter, or the way my mother had already started rearranging my living room furniture to make better use of the space. Whatever it was, I stood up, placed my keys on the table with deliberate precision, grabbed my purse and phone, and walked out of my own house without saying a word. The next morning brought a phone call that changed everything. My bank's fraud department was calling to alert me that someone had attempted to add additional names to my mortgage and change the contact information on my account. The attempt had been blocked due to inconsistent documentation, but they needed to confirm the names of the people who had tried. When they told me Robert and Martha Vance, my blood ran cold. This wasn't just about wanting to live in my house. This was identity theft. This was fraud. This was a calculated attempt to steal not just my home, but my entire financial future. I drove back to my house that afternoon, only to discover that my key no longer worked. A stranger answered the door, A woman in her 50s who claimed to be a property manager hired by the family to handle the transition. She told me I shouldn't return because there had been concerns about my mental stability. When I insisted on retrieving my belongings, she pointed to several boxes and garbage bags sitting behind the house, soaked from the previous night's rain. My grandmother's jewelry box was there, damaged but salvageable. Photo albums from my childhood lay scattered and water-stained. Years of professional documents were jumbled together in plastic bags like garbage. They had thrown away my life as casually as clearing out unwanted clutter. That night, staying at my best friend Lena's apartment, I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to fight back. Lena was furious when I told her everything. She helped me document the damaged belongings, photograph everything, and research lawyers who specialized in family financial abuse. "This isn't just about your house anymore, Eleanor," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "This is about them trying to destroy you." Marcus Thorne was the kind of lawyer who didn't sugarcoat reality. When I walked into his office with my evidence, he listened to my story with the grim expression of someone who'd seen this before. "Family financial abuse is more common than people realize," he told me. "The people who hurt us most are often the ones who know exactly which buttons to push to make us question ourselves. But I had something my family hadn't counted on: evidence. When I'd moved into the house, I'd installed a comprehensive security system that uploaded everything to cloud storage. For months, my cameras had been recording every time my family visited. Every conversation. Every action. The footage was damning. My mother, methodically going through my filing cabinet like a professional burglar. Serafina, gleefully replacing my family photos with pictures of herself and her boyfriend. My father, sitting at my desk, removing my router and replacing it with his own, his name scrawled on it in permanent marker. But the most devastating evidence was a voicemail I'd completely forgotten about, left on my home answering machine 2 years earlier. In it, my father's voice was clear and calculated. "She'll sign eventually. Once she signs, the house becomes ours to manage." Serafina's laughter in the background was audible, along with her comment, "She's so naive." The premeditation was undeniable. This hadn't been a spontaneous family decision. This had been a long-term plan to manipulate me into giving up everything I'd worked for. Marcus immediately filed for an emergency restraining order and initiated proceedings to reclaim my property. He also reported the identity theft attempt to the State Financial Crimes Unit. Within days, my family found themselves facing not just a civil lawsuit, but potential criminal charges. The reaction was swift and brutal. My father left threatening voicemails. My mother sent text messages filled with guilt and manipulation, asking why, as if she genuinely couldn't understand why I was upset about having my home stolen. Serafina's response was to try to discredit me publicly, posting on social media about my mental breakdown and vindictive behavior toward family. But their attempts at damage control only made things worse for them. I had saved every threatening message, every manipulative text, every attempt to gaslight me into believing I was the problem. Each piece of evidence strengthened my case and revealed the true scope of their campaign against me. The court date arrived like a reckoning. Sitting in that courtroom, looking across at my family flanked by their uncomfortable-looking lawyer, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not because I enjoyed conflict, but because finally, someone with authority was going to hear the truth. Marcus presented our case methodically. The timeline of events, the financial documents proving my sole ownership, the security footage showing their illegal entry and theft of my belongings, and the recorded evidence of their conspiracy. When my father tried to interrupt, claiming he was only protecting family assets, Marcus simply played the voicemail where my father clearly outlined his plan to manipulate me into signing over my rights. The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as the evidence mounted. When Serafina tried to claim she was just helping organize things, Marcus presented photographs of her throwing my grandmother's belongings into garbage bags. My testimony was the hardest part. Standing up there, looking directly at my family while recounting every manipulation, every lie, every moment they had made me question my own worth. But I kept my voice steady and focused on facts, not emotions. "Your Honor," I said, "I bought this house with my own money. secured the mortgage with my own credit, and made every payment from my own bank account. When I invited my family to celebrate this achievement with me, they saw an opportunity to take something that never belonged to them. This isn't about family disputes or misunderstandings. This is about theft. Plain and simple. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Not only was I confirmed as the sole legal owner of my property, but my family was ordered to cease all contact with me and my financial institutions. The restraining order was made permanent, and the case was forwarded to criminal prosecutors for potential fraud charges. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt like I could breathe, for the first time in months. Returning to my house was surreal. The locks had been changed back, and everything smelled wrong, like cheap air freshener trying to cover up the stench of violation. Room by room, I reclaimed my space, removing every trace of their presence, replacing their changes with choices that were purely mine. In the kitchen, I found one last surprise, a letter from my mother, hidden behind the silverware drawer. It was brief and completely tone-deaf. You'll understand someday that family decisions are complicated. You've always been stubborn, but we meant well. This is about preserving what matters. No apology. No acknowledgement of wrongdoing. No recognition that they had tried to destroy my life. Just the same entitlement and justification that had enabled their behavior all along. I took that letter outside and burned it in my fire pit, watching my mother's words turn to ash and drift away on the evening breeze. I understand perfectly, I said to the empty air. Rebuilding took time. Not just my house, but my sense of self. I had to learn to trust my own judgment again, to stop second-guessing every decision through the lens of what my family might think. I painted rooms in colors that made me happy, not colors that would meet their approval. I invited friends over without anxiety about criticism. I started living for myself instead of performing for an audience that never appreciated the show anyway. The legal consequences for my family were significant. My father faced criminal charges for the attempted mortgage fraud. My mother was named as a co-conspirator. Serafina lost a speaking opportunity at a women's leadership conference when the organizers learned about her involvement in the case. But the most satisfying consequence was simply my absence from their lives. No more emergency loans that were never repaid. No more free labor fixing their problems. No more emotional energy wasted trying to earn love that came with impossible conditions. 6 months later, I received a Christmas card from my mother with a generic message about forgiveness. I didn't respond. A few days after that, Serafina showed up at my door, wanting to explain her side and claiming she hadn't been proud of how things went. I listened to her half-hearted apology and manipulation attempt, then simply told her, "You're not here because you feel bad. You're here because you want to control the narrative and minimize the damage to your reputation." Her mask slipped for just a moment, and she admitted, "Maybe I was jealous. Maybe I didn't think you deserved such a nice house. At least that's honest." I replied, and closed the door. The final test came on New Year's Eve. Sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee, wrapped in a blanket my friend Lena had knitted for me, I watched fireworks bloom across the distant sky. They tried to take my house, I whispered to the night air, and almost succeeded. But they couldn't take the woman who built it. I went inside, locked my door not in fear but in contentment, and settled into my favorite chair in my living room that finally felt like home again. This house didn't need to be explained or justified. It just needed to be mine. And now, truly, it was. The story I told myself had changed completely. I was no longer the grateful daughter who owed endless debt to family who saw my success as their opportunity. I was a woman who had learned that love without respect isn't love at all, and that sometimes the people who claim to know what's best for you are the ones who understand you least. If there's one thing I learned from this entire ordeal, it's that boundaries don't make you selfish. They make you free. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who teach us the importance of saying no. I used to believe that family meant forever, no matter what. But now I know that forever only has meaning when there's mutual respect. Taking back my house wasn't just about brick and mortar. It was about reclaiming my voice, my worth, and the quiet strength I didn't know I possessed. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to win every argument to reclaim your value. Sometimes, simply standing your ground is the most powerful truth of all.